Hey, if you've watched the last couple of videos, probably won't be that much new in this one, honestly, but I realized I hadn't done a process video for like making a full shot in a while, so I wanted to do that. This is one of the last shots of the upcoming episode, and so in this video, I think I'm going to be trying to tackle the environment and the background, and then in the next one, I want to be doing all the foreground, kind of little detail type stuff. So here we go. Okay, finishing the last shot of the next episode, which is something I will say over and over. There's a lot of different criteria for what constitutes the last shot. There's the last shot to make all of the timing work. There's the last shot that's actually rendered, and then once I have everything finished, I like to go through and give every shot like another pass. And so, you know, in the morning I'll go through and I'll update a shot and be like, that was the last shot. Then later in the afternoon I'll be like, let's do this new last shot. But this is the last shot that needs like a big digital extension to it. And we filmed this while we were all, again, it was January, it was raining all day, everybody was very cold, but we did some things right. So I put a light inside this old cement thing to cast some soft light out onto them. I want to turn it into like a little food kiosk thing, maybe fill in like a boardwalk type thing around them here. And I think we're in a good starting point, because to get CG and live action to integrate, it really does help to have some sort of interactive, if you can see the CG thing casting light onto them and also light onto like other CG objects, it just ties everything together really good. And also just, I think the values in the shot, like this is obviously in log, but the blue dusk with the warm foreground light and all the values and like the highlights, it's a perfect time of evening. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it. And I've actually already started. I was working on it last night and I thought, this might actually be kind of a fun video. So I've tracked it and I've projected it off onto my usual geometry. If you watch the video I just did about the align camera track feature, I'll link to it below. That goes through all of the like tracking and reprojection process. But just to go through it really fast, I will go into the VFX motion tracking space, loading the footage. And this is all the linearized EXR sequence. I should make another video about that, although, I mean, it's really basic. But I usually do my tracking on a separate clip right here, which is the exact same thing. I've just lifted the shadows and increased the sharpness a little bit to help me get a good track. And then I'll usually go to like set scene frames to match it to the length of the clip, go to the middle. I'll make the pattern size a little bit larger and the search size also. And you can change the motion model to, affine, which just lets you get a little bit of perspective skew, and it still doesn't get mad at that, which means we can click on things on walls that we're going to be close to, and even if it flattens out, it's a little bit more forgiving. I can just control click on certain points of contrast, usually just little white specks, especially places where I want to know where this geometry is so I can have them correctly looking into the hole. I'm going to get a little bit more data there, because each one of these points is going to be turning into an empty in 3D space, so we can kind of use these to reconstruct the scene. So I'm simultaneously trying to get good tracking points, but also points that I'd want to use for scene reconstruction. Yeah, so let's see how this goes. So I'm going to click track backwards. And these are working great. All we need are 8 tracks overlapping at any given time, and we have way more than that. So this should work fantastic. Going back to that frame, tracking forwards. Gonna open up this and see if there's any egregious anomalies here, and it doesn't really look like it. The outer ones a lot of times just mean they're towards the outside of the track, so there's more parallax. So, but if they get really weird and they're acting too anomalous, you'll get kind of like a red or green line zipping out. So let's go into the track panel here, put in our camera settings. Mine happen to be the default. Sensor width is 35 and the focal length is 24. Which means if we go in the solve panel, we pick our keyframes, which is just 2 frames that demonstrate the parallax real good. So like right here, you can see I'm kind of leaning to the right as the shot goes on. So I'll put 130 and like 3. And I think this should work pretty good. Look at that, solve error of 0.6. We're going to go into our layout tab. We're going to create a camera, and under the constraints tab, we're going to give it the camera solve. And now it's moving like our real camera here. And we turn on the motion tracking in the overlay settings, we can see all of our tracking points. And you can kind of see we have that wall there. So I'm going to try to align these up just kind of by eye. Like you can see right here, all of these points, if we get them vertical, it should kind of match the scene. It's not totally true, and it actually messed me up a little bit, because if you look here, this isn't flat to the horizon. Like the horizon's down here, but the vanishing line of this wall seems to be going above it, and so by lining it up to that, everything was a little askew. But also, we've got, nothing needs to match all that well. Also, if we put in a cube, that's about, and scale it down a little bit, that's about the height of a person, so I'm going to try to scale this so that the top of the cement thing matches about the right height. That looks good. And I'm going to do a quick low poly model of the scene a little bit. Try to match it up with the points we got from the track here. And the further away you get, the less it really matters, but I still want to pull it out pretty far. Then from the camera view, we're going to make sure it's actually filling up the entire view here. We'll put something here for them to be talking into, just kind of try to line it up with these points. And then I think there's, this is the other wall there. And again, watch the Align Camera Track video for a little bit more information, or I've talked about it a bunch, but the basics are we're going to give this an emissive texture. And to project the footage on it, you need to basically generate UV coordinates based off of the view of the camera. So we can just project the footage straight onto this geometry here. And the built-in tools in Blender aren't great, but Nathan made us a new one. It's part of the Compify add-on that we released, and I will link to that below. You can just download it. It's great. And it lets you just select the camera and go down into the camera settings and say New Camera Project Node, so that when we go into the shader editor and plug our footage into the emission shader, select everything but the MP4. You can see right now it has no idea how to project on the geometry, but if we get rid of these mapping nodes and use the group created by the Camera Project add-on, just drag that in. It looks crazy, but from the camera view here, it all lines up perfectly. And here, if we change it from repeat to clip, you can see it doesn't line up at all, and that's because we also have to update the camera settings. So change the camera settings to what they were in the tracker. In this case, 24 lens and a 35mm sensor, and now everything is feeling better. We'll try to kind of line certain things up, and we can always update it if it turns out we have to, but just for reference, this should work okay. And while this works okay from the camera view, obviously if we get offset, you can see they're being projected all the way off onto this background plane all the way over here, which is kind of weird. And there's... it always looks great. And while there's things we could do about that, lately I've just been using new tools to automatically mask them and project them using the same technique onto a plane in the foreground. And let's jump over to the file I was doing last night. You can see I've got them floating right here, and that's just using new tools that are coming out now. You know, there's Rotobrush. I use Magic Mask and Resolve with the Studio version, which is still, I think, $300 for the whole Studio thing. Definitely better than paying for Adobe forever, in my opinion. But there's other tools. Magnum VD released a free auto roto thing that works inside of Blender that can do exactly this. And it's not perfect. Like, if you look at it, it's a little bit fuzzy. But if all you're trying to do is kind of separate them from the background, that's really useful. And it means I was able to, like, block in some walkways in the background and put a little railing behind them, which is just a great way to tie them into the digital environment. And again, if you look close, it's a little funky, but like no one will really notice. It'll all just kind of work. And I still think it's cool though, because this is like linearized log footage, higher dynamic range format. If we play with the exposure, you can see we still keep the highlights back here in these distant lights, and everything is still linear and mathematically accurate. That's very cool to me. That said, you'll notice there's some fireflies and stuff here. And typically with these render settings, I should not be seeing any fireflies at all. But that's because in general, Blender's pretty good about optimizing the path tracer so that as you're bouncing light around, it's always trying to get to a light source. And that's how it knows how bright something should be. Like, it isn't just bouncing the light around in different random directions. It's always trying to optimize it so it's going towards the light source so it can see how much illumination is going on. But in the case of a video texture, it has no idea where the bright parts of this video are. And so it's just bouncing randomly onto it and being like, hey, what's up? And 1 out of every 1,000 maybe hits this light and goes, oh, that's really bright. And so that's why you're seeing those little fireflies kind of down below. Just a thing to be aware of if you're doing this process. And jumping ahead a bit, but I ended up tackling this because you can see once I added the volumetrics, the video texture was kind of creating this sparkly kind of firefly city over here. And the biggest wait with render times is usually waiting for those fireflies to resolve. And I found if you can just avoid the few things that generate the fireflies to begin with, you can get away with having very low numbers of samples and getting really fast render times. Like, a lot of times I only have like 500 to 1,000 samples or whatever, and my average frame can render in like 40 seconds. Like, I'm rendering on a 4090, but still, like, render times don't have to be bananas. And the reason these fireflies are here is that these white points are just overbright parts of the image. If we turn down the exposure, you can see they're just so much brighter than everything else. So if we can just clamp those overbright areas, we can basically get the same image but without all of the fireflies. And so first, I just put in a clamp right here, but you can see that converts it to black and white, and that's because color data is actually made up of 3 channels, red, green, and blue, with 3 different sets of values, you know, for each. And I don't know if doing math on color data means we're just using like the first channel, like this is the red result, or if it averages all 3 together, but regardless, we've got to separate these out. So let's go converter, separate color. Now we're only seeing the red output and the sky is dark, but if we change that to blue, the sky should be brighter and her face should be darker. Okay. Whoa, it's kind of cool. So let's also add a combine color here and stick all 3 of these together. You can see the image is all reforming. But now we can put a clamp on any of these channels. Let's clamp it to like 1.5, which should give us still some good dynamic range, but without having things, you know, blow out quite as much. I'm just going to paste that onto all 3 of the channels. And if I select these and hit M, you can see the Firefly City appears and disappears. And so it's like slightly less accurate, except I didn't actually need to have these lights interacting with the haze to begin with. And so in this case, this is the trade-off I'll take for significantly faster render times. And okay, for lighting, that was as easy as just loading in the footage here, going to the sky settings, clicking color, using the eyedropper, and alt dragging around the color sky I wanted on the footage. And if you hold down alt, it'll just average out all the values you drag over. And so that means we've got basically the right color sky up here. But one thing I talk about a lot is if you're ever trying to make natural light feel intentional, it helps to take some of it away. One way to make things look, you know, cinematic or on purpose is to be shooting towards the light, which means a lot of times I'll add an overhang or something like that to a scene like this. Literally just like that, to put the foreground in shadow and the background a little bit lighter. And I keep noticing this in films where I really like the cinematography, especially like with naturalism, is they're always shooting towards the light where the sky is the brightest thing and the foreground's the darkest, because it means every layer of the shot is you get to experiment with silhouettes and forms and things which still read really immediately. So because of that, I put kind of a foreground window here, which also helps hide the fact that they, you know, the tracking didn't really give them any feet. Maybe I'll bring this a little bit closer too. And the last bit of kind of setup work I'm going to do is try to match this lighting. So where's the gap? Yeah, they're talking in this gap here. I'm going to create an area light that's about that size, stick it back in there. And then I might just eyeball the colors, because on them it looks yellow, but on the background it looks kind of red, and I could alt drag and do that kind of thing on here. Actually, you know what? I think that works okay, and I'll just turn up the value and also the brightness until it feels as if it's about right. Like you can see the shadow stretches, or the light stretches off pretty far. And also the brighter I have it, the more I can kind of make it like the center of the shot. Like I want to put a lot of translucent things in the foreground here that'll kind of be able to catch and play with the light. And I also want like a lot of little shimmering things in the background. I want to put them as if they're like on a boardwalk, kind of a carnival type thing, which is what I actually want to make this video about today. So let's get started, I guess. And because we actually have them on this plane here, we can cheat the depth of field a little bit. Like if we turn it on, set the depth to just right click and select them, and turn down the f-stop, you can see the background gets all blurry. But of course, because they're also on the background there, we're seeing this weird echo around them. And we can either just keep this down to the point where it doesn't really show up too much, or we can kind of split the difference, put a little plane behind them like this. Because you can see if we do that, because it's not actually as far away, it's not going to be as out of focus, and now we don't get that weird halo around them. But I also sometimes like to add a little bit of volumetrics into the scene. Look at that. Oh, that's so fun to just be able to do that. This is the dream. This is great. But you can see now, we can see the rectangle because it's blocking a lot of the haze. So if I move this back and just kind of, again, I do so much just splitting the difference type stuff. So that kind of works, except you can still see the top of it there. I could also design the scene so that there's like a bunch of dangling, you know, an arm coming out with like bags of chips hanging from it just behind her face, so you don't see that glow. Is another thing we could do. We'll see. We'll see how we end up designing this. For now, I think we can delete that plane right there. Also, I like how it looks, but it's a little bit intense for the continuity of the rest of the sequence. Oh, here, ooh, let's drag it all the way in the background like that and see how. Oh, that's very hazy. And what's so cool about this is only the brightest parts of the background are actually bleeding through the fog, which would be just how it'd be in like real life. But here, let's turn this down like 1.5 instead. Okay, now we're at where I was at last night when I said, maybe I should make a video about this. I'm going to stick a dude in the background here. Just to get a sense of the scale of everything. The annoying thing about these big shadow blocking things is they always get in the way, so I might turn all of that off for now. And first check, does this actually match this about the size of the people I have going here? Yeah, that's close enough. That feels pretty natural. I think I want to try to model like an arcade type thing going on here with like a few kind of games and stuff inside. And I also want to make like a couple custom neon signs. So let's do that. But I think the first thing I want to do is that having big gray boxes in the scene just kind of always bums me out because it always reminds me like, oh, there's still so much to do. So I want to get these looking as halfway decent as I can as quickly as possible. So I'm going to grab the underside of all of these, pull them down to the kind of an appropriate thickness, maybe move them up. And let's see, I want kind of maybe some sort of border frame, and inside I want it to be like cement pieces, kind of just different slabs of cement. We'll try to get the texture right. And so I'm going to divide this up into the slabs like this. Select one of these, Shift G, select coplanar, do the same thing right here. And if I hit I can inset everything, which will give us what we can make the outer frame out of. I'm going to hit E to extrude it down. Then I'm going to, let's see, what's the best way to do this? Maybe I'll bring it down a little bit too much, and then hit Alt-E, extrude individual faces, and bring all of these back up. And what's cool about these is that now there's, like, extra geometry in between them like that, because we extruded each one individually. So if we take all of them and hit Control-B, it looks kind of weird. It looks like it's beveling more across than it is down, which means we need to apply the scale. So let's go back into object mode, hit Control-A, apply the scale, tab back into edit mode, and now when we try beveling, you can see it's beveling down as opposed to just in. Here, we'll turn up that a tad. And so now we have got a bunch of different panels. I'm going to select a few of these random ones here and expand the selection so it goes and selects the whole thing. Change it to individual origins, and hopefully I can just, rotate them a little bit, and I'll do the same again, like that. Cool, and maybe even rotate them a little bit and shrink them down slightly. And here, we'll make one that's just properly lower than the other ones. And already that breaks it up really good. Here, let's hit Alt-click on this edge, maybe this one and this one here. We can do the same there. And let's smooth that out a little bit just with Control-B. Oh, I should turn on the screencast keys, of course. Here, there we go. And since I have these selected, I can hit Control+ on the numpad to expand that selection. And now we have everything we want to apply like a wood or frame material to. So let's just give two materials here. First one will be ground, and I'll create a new one, which will just be, I don't know, the trim. And with these selected, if we hit assign, they'll all get that trim material. And let's just make that a little bit darker right now to kind of get a sense of the form. The ground, let's load in an image texture. And this is where, if we were really cool, we would go out into the world and find some slabs of concrete that actually kind of match what we're looking for, and we'd use a drone and take pictures of them, maybe do a full photo scan or something, but we're not that cool, and so I'm just trying to find something here that kind of matches maybe. If we slap that on there, and here, we select all the ground stuff and hit U, cube projection, and go into the UV editor and kind of make it a lot bigger. How does that just feel? It looks like it's too shiny. I'm going to turn the roughness way up. And the thing is, obviously, this doesn't respect the geometry we have underneath. So let's be slightly cooler than this and see if we can find something on the internet. This is already looking pretty promising. Look at all of these. I love this one. I probably use this one a little bit too much, but I might use it again just because. Ho-ho! And ooh, these ones should work okay. Like they're boring, but they're the right vibe, but you won't notice that they're being kind of copied and pasted. And also they have this little bit of brick going on that we might be able to use right there. And if we go into edit mode, I'm going to try to get it so that these already match more or less the shape of the squares. So I just have to line them up. And to do that, I might, let's see. If I shift right click, I can put the 3D cursor here, and right now it's scaling the entire thing from like the center of the object, which is annoying, but we can change it to 2D cursor so that now I can just work with it from here, and like that'll be the origin of everything. Okay, since that one's lined up, ideally all the rest of these will be about the right size too. So if I select one of these and hit Control plus on the numpad a few times to expand the selection, ooh, not that many times, I can just stick it on one of these panels here. Yeah, and that feels good. And so sometimes I just like doing things by hand, so and that probably looks okay. Here, if we put a light here and turn it up, it's kind of looking a little bit flat, maybe. I'm going to see what happens if we add a little bit of a bump map to it. Just going to drag this down into the normal, stick it through a vector bump map here, plug it into the height, and make the distance like 0.02 or something. You can see it kind of breaks up a little bit of that sheen a little bit. Maybe just to see how it works, I'm going to drag the color into the roughness. And that's a little bit too intense, but if I put it through a color ramp here and dial some stuff in, this will be the darkest it can get, but I'm going to change that so it's not black. It's more of just kind of a light gray. Maybe a little bit. And that's kind of okay, but here, I'm going to duplicate this, load in basically just anything that has kind of a consistent funk over the top of it. Maybe we'll try that one. And if I drag that into the IOR input of the specular settings and dial that in with a color ramp here, maybe just darken all the middle stuff. Basically, that just gives us this pattern like this, which is cool because it implies there's kind of pieces of gum and stuff stuck to the ground. I think that's good, and I think hopefully it'll kind of play in an interesting way with like any neon or anything we have in the background. For the trim here, first, because I always have to, I'm just gonna break up this hard corner just a little bit. I could do the same there, although it doesn't matter at all. I'm gonna select all of the trim and just load in an image texture, see how it works. Maybe I'll use this one. I just like that top bit here. Let's see. I might have to denote a seam on this because I want to unwrap it. And right now, if you try to unwrap it, it'll just unwrap it like a big donut. Here. You can see in a big loop because it doesn't know where to cut it. But if we select like this bit right here and say Control E mark seam, now it has a way to unwrap it. So if we do that same thing again, you unwrap, it'll unwrap it kind of linearly like that. And we can do the same thing here. Mark seam, and now if we select all of these, U, unwrap, we've got two long lines, and if we open this up, I've got the UV squares add-on activated, so I can say to grid by shape, and that'll straighten everything out, except for this one. I'll bet it's because I beveled this. Okay, let's see if we have enough undos. Come on. Yes, okay, we're good. So just remark those seams, and now select the trim. Oh yeah, we still gotta deselect these faces, and now unwrap to grid by shape. They're both so clean. Okay, that's excellent. And I'll try to line these up a little bit. Load our image texture back in there, and now hopefully we can just stick this on there, and it'll kind of feel okay. Oh, it's upside down. Hey, that feels pretty natural. And if it's repeating too much, we can just scale it down to kind of stretch it out horizontally, and that feels fantastic. So this one works. It unwrapped great, but this one all decided to unwrap two-dimensionally, which is weird. And I could just alt-click on different edge loops until I was able to kind of pull it apart like this. But that is feeling a little bit nuts, and I'd rather just figure out how to fix it. So I'm going to select all of this and hit H to hide. So now we're only selecting this one, so I can select only the problematic trim here. And let's see, U, unwrap, that's feeling okay. I'm gonna select one of these squares, and I'm gonna straighten it up right now. So I'm gonna rotate it. I'm going to like flatten out these top bits, SY0, do the same down here, SY0, SX0, SX0. There's probably an easier way to do that. But now I'm going to select everything with that face as the active and hit F3. Follow active quads. Yes. And now we'll just keep extending along the grid all of those pieces. And look at that. That actually basically fixes it. Hopefully. Oh, look at that. Even though I forgot to deselect those lower areas, I think everything's working okay. Let's see if this is what we want. Totally is. That feels natural. And when we look at it in the scene, it looks pretty good. And if I bring back my haze and kind of the shadow casting thing too, you can see those are both doing quite a bit for helping with the realism. One thing that I think is fun is I can have this light move through here, and because of the haze and the other CG objects, it feels like the CG light is actually having an inordinate effect on the scene. Like, it isn't affecting them, but because it's affecting enough things around them, everything feels more or less kind of integrated. Let's see how easily we can scatter garbage on this thing. Here, I'm going to make the railing a separate object. I just want the ground to be an object. I'm going to create a plane. I'm going to use Control R to subdivide it just a little bit, but not too much. And I'll maybe lift up kind of these edges and corners just a little bit to maybe make it catch the light. Going to give it a new material. We'll call it Magazine. Make the base color maybe just this picture of a billboard I took once, although it's 4K, which is maybe a little big. So I'm gonna find that image and copy and paste it and go edit and see what pops up. Hey, MS Paint. All right, let's resize it to maybe just 2K, and then we'll load in the 2K version instead. I'm going to zoom in here. This is not the best way to do this, but it's the way that we're doing. If I hit Control T, I got the mapping nodes here, and I just want to randomize this for every instance of it. So if I put an object info random input into the location, look at that. Every piece gets its own little bit. In fact, it looks like I should shrink this tad. And now if I put this in a new collection called pieces of paper, which I can hide. I go back to my cement here and I give it a particle system. We're going to make it hair, but instead of these big spikes, we're going to render the hair as a collection, which will just be our pieces of paper. And here, let's open this up. And I can never remember which direction is the default kind of up for this. For some reason, do you have to have it pointing this way? Gonna rotate 90 degrees. Control A, apply rotation. No. Okay, that's right. It has to be pointing up when you're in the top view, like this. So if I hit Control A, apply rotation now. Or is that backwards? Why do they make this part so weird? Is because right now when I move it downwards, like if I'm in the top view and I move it down, everything is moving up. Who knows why, but I can use that. So I'll just make it so the paper is hovering slightly over its own origin, which means everything should now be working okay here. That's weird that that's so confusing. All right, I'm going to change the scale randomness. I'm going to make the source be random. Going to check advanced, check rotation, and let's see if it works with like normal tangent or maybe just like, yeah, velocity hair or something. But if we rotate that, everything rotates on its own. These ones that are kind of sticking up perfectly out of the cracks are kind of cool, but also maybe kind of weird. Like, I like what they do for the distant shape, but maybe they're a bit much. I think also I'm going to select one of these bottom faces and hit Shift G, coplanar, and delete all of those and all of these too, just so that I don't have to worry about them. Maybe turn down the scale a little bit and the total number of everything to like 200, maybe 300. I want it to feel like it's at the end of like a long, busy day on the pier. And I like it in general, but these foreground ones are a bit much, so I might just change the seed until, yeah, we don't get that. Yeah, that works good. That works good. Here, if I go under the pieces of paper settings and select the material, I can turn down the roughness because I do want them to be kind of smooth. That's maybe a little bit much, so I'll just turn down the specular. But no, okay, yeah, that's a nice dirty pier, and especially if we delete this white light here, you can see everything's blending really well. And now I'm noticing that the texturing here is kind of weird, but I think I kind of like it. I think we can use that because I want to add a railing, and if we kind of imply there's a groove here, you slot the railing into and then kind of like lock it around the edge. I think that would be a decent railing design. So gonna go back into local view here, use Control R to add an edge loop, slide it out, Control B to kind of just create that. Alt E, extrude faces along normals, pull it down. And for the railing, yeah, I wanted to kind of fit in like this. Maybe it'll go up, then out, because why not? And up, and then there'll be like a little table here where people could eat. And this would be like a place where their knees go if there were ever a stool. Yeah, they sit. That's a person eating a burger into their big mouth. Hey, it's Kermit the Frog. Hey, Kermit. And then I'll also add some lamps, I think, kind of going down the way. You ever see like concept art for business parks, and it's always full of like a million families playing frisbee, and it's like, look at this, this will be a community hub. It's like, no, it is a parking lot, you idiots. I kind of want to capture that vibe a little bit. I'm gonna model it in 2D first, and then hope that this all just kind of works out okay. Select this, Alt E, extrude faces along normals, check offset even to kind of keep it from being too wonky like that. Maybe I'll add an edge loop here, Control B to bevel it, and just grab one of these, pull it down into the groove. And we're not even going to see it that close, so I'm sure that's totally fine. In fact, maybe I'll grab these 3 faces here and Alt S, tuck them in a little bit too, as if this is a, I don't know what that's supposed to be, but that's okay. E to extrude, scale it down, and this will be 1 railing going up. And again, I want to get one of my people over here. Gonna extrude it out like this, and then back up, and then I think I wish, you know, like you know how there's the slant thing, and that's so useful, but I want to be able to do it on this way too, because all I want to do is pull these parts down a little bit, and these parts up, and I can just do that. I just feel like there should be a slightly easier way, you know. And we'll select all these corner pieces and Control B to bevel them just a little bit. Let's add that little tabletop thing on top. A little bit of trim. And if I stick a few of these out along here to kind of give me a sense of what the railing is like, and also if I stick it like right behind them, does it feel like it's still kind of the right scale? Yeah, totally. Maybe I'll make it the tiniest little bit taller here. And let's turn this into an actual finished railing. So I'm going to duplicate this, pull it out. Going to select these, Shift S, cursor to selected, so I can create a cube that just is exactly right there. Shrink it down. This will be a different type of steel tube. Bring it over to there. And I don't want to add too many. Maybe I'll just do kind of like 4. Bring them up here also. Delete this top bit. Let's pull that out. Bevel those, bevel the entire top. And just for a little bit of extra detail, let's add a little kind of like mounting plate or something. I'm not even going to figure out how it would work or if it could or should work, but there we go. There's that, and maybe we'll add a little like gap in the middle, and then I'll add a 12-sided cylinder here to be a washer. And inset, extrude, that'll be, yeah, there we go. We got some washers and bolts. Let's give this all a material. I'm picturing, again, we're just going to do an image texture. I'm thinking something green. Ooh, maybe we'll just try that one. And the mapping is all wrong, but I like the concept, so maybe we'll just clean up some of these pieces here. First, I might apply the scale and unwrap it again so it all actually unwraps in the right. Huh, that's interesting. Aspect ratio, I'm going to scale this all up. Ooh, okay, so if we scale this, so it kind of fills that. And let's see if we can kind of do what we did with the concrete on this one. I'm going to put a light in here so we can see the reflection like this. And in the shader editor, and I want to separate out the metal from the green. They're kind of the same brightness level, so I don't know if we can just use like levels. Maybe the green is darker, but let's try using a, oh, where is it? Hue, saturation, no. Separate color. And if we change it from RGB to hue saturation value, we can get an output that's literally just the saturation. Yes, that's excellent. And now we can use that through a color ramp to kind of like make, to really separate the paint from the metal. In fact, let's invert it here. Cool. And we'll just plug that into the metallic option. And if we take a look at this, that's already looking pretty good. Turn down the roughness, but I do want to plug the entire thing into that specular input here. And let's plug this original separation into the bump map too. Vector bump, because right now the higher areas, the paint is black. We want to invert that. So plug it into the height, invert, plugged it into the normal. And that's bananas. Let's change the distance to something reasonable, 0.01. Wow, that's still pretty wild. Apply the scale. 0.002, 0.001. Turn down the strength. And yeah, that feels good. And this is looking kind of uniform. If we plug this into the roughness, and here, let's dial it in again through a color ramp. Sure, let's see how that works. And because we do have this kind of distinctive pattern on the top, I don't want to repeat that over and over. So I'm going to select the entire thing, move it over here, and just kind of randomize that top bit in the UV editor again. So right now it's right there. Let's try moving it to... And I think this, yeah, this is the top right here. So what can we do to kind of mix that up? We could just rotate it 180 degrees, but that'll still probably feel a little bit, copy pasty. Yeah, so maybe I'll just shrink it and kind of like stick it over here. Yeah, that feels natural. In fact, let's do, heck yeah, we'll do one more of these. Maybe select one of them, and just so everything isn't too square, I'm going to put the 3D cursor down here, set it to the, and set that to be the pivot point. Rotate the whole thing just a little bit, skew it. And now, hopefully, we stick these all the way down along here. We can kind of cheat this last one. Hopefully, that'll all feel a-okay. Delete that light. I guess now that I'm looking at it, it's a little tall for this person. Like, ideally, kids would be able to reach it also. So for that, let's just grab these bits here, pull them down, see how that feels. Great, that's excellent. And I think the metal is maybe a little bit too smooth here, so I'll just drag that over and... But it kind of feels like it's ignoring all the texturing we did here. I'm going to put the metallic mask also into the index of refraction and see if we can just use that to darken up that silhouette a little bit. And here, we won't make it quite that dark. Ooh, the garbage and everything, that this is feeling kind of tangible. I'm really happy. This bit here, I want a little bit of a contact shadow there. And if we put a plane in here with a transparent shader on it, it doesn't do anything. But whatever color we put in here will be what it multiplies the background by. So if we bring it, you know, to like red or whatever, it'll multiply in a red color. And we can use that to make a shadow just by, here, let's put a gradient into the color and see what that looks like. And now look at that, we just have an immediate kind of contact shadow. We can rotate 180 degrees and stretch it out along the course of this entire deal. Dial in our shadow however we want it. Maybe, I don't need much. Even that almost makes it feel a little bit too, maybe I won't have it go all the way out to the end. It'll just kind of stop right there. Yeah, kind of implying that it's jutting out a little bit. Yeah, that's good. Let's try sticking these off into the distance. I don't know, maybe it'll feel like too much of the same asset over and over, or maybe it'll sell the whole thing. We need like a paper cup back here. If I alt middle click right there, does it, I think, yeah, that centers us on it. That's rad. Let's create a cylinder, give it a few more vertices here, scale it to the right size, make it match this platform here. Grab the top, Alt S, move it up, out, delete those faces. Oh yeah, there we go. There's a cup. And I like this vibe right now. Like, it does feel like you're somewhere at the end of the day, or maybe the dawn before the day started because of the amount of like kind of haze in the air. But it feels like you're in a place where often people have fun, but not right now, which is good because these characters are supposed to be kind of existing just slightly outside of everything. It's supposed to be kind of like a lonely kind of feeling. But let's see if we can create like a distant entrance to an arcade or something. Although I always want to like mix it up. So I'm like, what if it wasn't an arcade? It's a narcade. Cops only. That feels okay. Here, let's grab this top row here and Shift D, Alt S, bring it out, offset even to keep it all square. And this will be maybe the front of the building. Maybe even Alt E, extrude those faces. Yeah, keep offset. Why isn't offset even on by default? I'm sure there's a really good reason. Here, duplicate this right here. And we'll make kind of a few support beams like that. In fact, if we go like this, duplicate these, and then up on top of it. Come on, sorry, it's confusing because there's X-ray on. There we go. And we bring this on top. as like the light source, I think that could be kind of interesting. Here, let's give all of this a arcade material, and right here, let's just give it a an emissive material. Assign that. Maybe make it like 11. Is that going to be too bright? And that's cool. That just kind of breaks up the light a little bit. So if we do a few of these just down the way, and we can use, normally I cover the top of them so we wouldn't have all that light spilling out, but I think in this case we might be able to use that a little bit. Here, let's create kind of a, sorry, I have this kind of sense of like where everything is, and so a lot of times I work without even being able to see like what I'm doing, and like there's a plane in the way and I'm still just like extruding, but that probably makes for a horrible video. Here, select this, let's bring down all of this stuff, but I do want to create a loop here, duplicate it, separate it into a whole new object here, gonna extrude it up and maybe bring it in, and this will be kind of like a canopy type deal. And I'm gonna delete any faces that I don't really care about, get these all about the same distance. And what's the best way to do this? I mean, I could do an actual cloth sim on it, but that would probably be, that would be ridiculous. Okay, no, I'm just going to duplicate this and tab into edit mode and use Alt S to bring one out. And the inner one, I'm going to give a wireframe modifier, generate wireframe, thicken that up a little bit. And maybe bring all of these in too, because these are just literally just for casting a shadow. Maybe thicken it up even a little bit more. This outer object here, we can delete these. We're just going to give a translucent material. We'll call this the awning. And I'm going to make my own kind of mix of translucent and maybe glossy here. Combine them together. I want to see if I can find a good kind of canvas, plastic canvas kind of image texture that we can use on there. Yeah, I always love that one. Okay, we're going to do what we did earlier. Going to add an edge loop here and hit Control E, mark seam. So ideally we can just unwrap this whole thing and look in the UV editor. There it is. UV squares to grid by shape. Excellent. Load in that plastic material here. And I like these bottom bits. That's just some really good kind of connecting edge texture. Let's see what that looks like. Here, we'll scale it down so it's not repeating quite as much. That feels good. Let's also plug it into the glossy. We can also use the same image texture to decide where it's translucent and where it's glossy. So it maps it basically to a grayscale image from 0 to 1. Black is 0, white is 1. You can see also the shader goes from 0. This first slot is 0, the translucent, to 1, entirely glossy. So if we drag this into here, the dark parts of the image are going to be translucent. The bright parts are going to be glossy. Let's invert that. And also, I want to multiply a color against this. So we can make it, I don't know what color would be good. Maybe we multiply by that into both of these. That works okay. Let's apply something on this. I don't really care. It's not going to affect the image much. That's just some nice random grungy stuff. Well, is there anything that has kind of a separation between the top and the bottom? Let's try this one right there. And if we select everything and hit U, cube projection, and then align it on the thing, and then I have no idea what part of this is what, but I might just kind of pull this around until we get, I don't think I like this image texture. Let's try that one, and we'll just slide things around until something kind of, like I want the red line to line up with something reasonable. Cool, yeah, that's good. Maybe that's a little bit too grungy, but that's okay. And if we put these guys somewhere white, that reads excellent. Here, let's give it some sort of ground too. I'm just going to duplicate this square and fill this whole space with it. And then maybe put another light inside of here. I want a nice big bright kind of warm one bleeding out onto the walkway. Turn up the brightness, and let's bring all of our other stuff back. And yeah, that feels fairly well situated. Even like the warm tones blend with the warm lights of the background. It all feels pretty connected. I have no idea how far I'm going to go with this video today. I've already been recording for quite a while. Let's add a little animated arcade sign. And the hard part with this is I've done so many neon signs over the years that now they just remind me of like what my stuff looked like 5 years ago. So I'm like, no, that looks too 2019 Ian, but let's give it a shot here. You know what I mean? When sometimes you don't like the look of something just because it looks like what you used to do, and you're like, no, that looks like I got to do a, I don't know. So let's just say arcade. Find a font that already looks a little bit rounded like neon. Let's try this one. Ew. And this works okay, except like it has these perfect 90-degree angles, which is hard to do with the glass tube. So let's change the fill to none. I'm going to say convert to mesh. Let's see, where is it? Convert mesh, because in the mesh tools, it's really easy to fix that. Here, we'll go into local view. I'm going to select these. Basically every corner that I want to round out a little bit. And with those selected, we hit Control-Shift-B, which allows us to bevel individual points. Yeah, I don't think we have any egregious intersections here. Now we can convert this back to a curve and get all of our nice curve tools back. We can turn up the depth of the bevel a little bit, and that turns it into neon. And if we use the offset, we can expand it a little. Oh, look at that. It goes in different directions. I don't know what to do about that at this point. So maybe we just leave it like this. Let's create a good neon material. I might thicken this up even a little bit more. And it's maybe thinner than I need it to be. And so I can just scale all of this out right there, and it'll still just keep all of the tube proportionate. Okay, so let's give this a neon material. Neon, and I'm not even too worried about this. Let's see. Let's make it glass. Sure. Maybe darken it up just a tad. And in the shader editor, I'm going to use a add shader here to add in an emission. And this is coming from the surface. We could just plug the emission into the volume, and that would probably be more realistic, but I also I don't know, that feels weird. I'm just gonna plug it into the surface. We'll make it like, yeah, orange or something. And when you look at it in the scene, you can see absolutely nothing. Let's see, what happens if we put it up here, and we'll kind of have it like sticking out from the, wow, it's really not legible. That's actually good. That's okay, because I feel like I dropped the ball just calling it arcade. I should have called it something kind of wacky or whatever. But no, this will work well. To make the supports, I'm going to duplicate it like this and maybe fatten it up. Again, we can work kind of impressionistically because we can't actually see what's going on here. So I'm going to give this a different material that's just dark. And if we turn up the depth here, yeah, that feels reasonable. And the final thing I want to do is kind of animate it a little bit. So let's stick this out, and behind it, I want to duplicate this, and we'll give this one a, well, maybe even fatter. And we'll give that one a new material called Animated Neon. Animated Neon here, let's make it yellow so we can kind of differentiate a little bit. And to animate the neon, if you look up how to animate neon signs on the Patreon, you can find me going into this in way more detail. But effectively, I'm offsetting the UV coordinates of the texture on top of it. And I only know how to do that if it's a mesh. So let's take this object, and here, we'll hide this other neon, and convert it back to a mesh. So now, if we put an image texture into the strength of the emission, we can use that to power how bright the neon is. I've shared this texture before. It's one I made specifically for this purpose. I can share it again. You can see right now it's kind of mapped on there a little bit weird. Here, let's open up the UV editor so we can actually see what we're doing here. You can see right now the unwrapping is very weird, but like if we go to the front view and hit U, project from view, and let's say we put it like this, and we move it up and down, you can see it animates across the word. But of course, it's weird if it's like a single neon tube to have a gradient. So what I do is I go to individual origins and scale all of these different islands down to 0. So now all of them are just sampling 1 point on the image. And if we want it even more pronounced, we can go to like right here. And right now it feels kind of arbitrary, but if we change this back to median and clump them all back together, you'll be able to see a little bit easier that they're chasing each other. But let's see. Let's bring it right here so it's soft. And again, I've been doing this for long enough that my brain, I'm not talking particularly great right now, but I do cover this a lot in some of the older tutorials. Just look for animated or complex or advanced neon, whatever I called it. Okay, so this is all set up. All we have to do now is offset the UV coordinates in the mapping node here. like that. How great's that? And we can do that. Here, let's go combine X, Y, Z. If I put a value node into Y and hit pound frame divided by like 20, that automatically animates. Let's make it go like even slower here. And I think I wanted to go from left to right as if you're reading it. So let's go by -50. And to make it not feel quite so perfect, I'm going to use a math node here and snap it to the nearest interval of like, I don't know, let's try like 0.05, 0.1. Yeah, that's feeling good. Maybe 0.087. Nice. So it's still working good, except it only has a max value of 1, which isn't quite as bright as I want. So I'm just going to use another math node to multiply the white values of the flicker controller to something more appropriate, like maybe 5. Then we watch this. I like that. And hopefully this also, like, you see it in the reflections here on the ground, which will make everything feel nice and dynamic. And now we can play with the colors. What if we make this other neon like blue or something? Ooh. Or maybe a little bit more kind of green. Kind of get this green purple kind of thing going on, which is nice. Next, let's do a couple little stupid arcade machines. And I might do that in a new instance of Blender down here. So let's make something that's just kind of evocative of like a pinball, skee ball, something type deal using techniques we've already kind of been doing. Kind of pull this out, and this will be the base. I just kind of want like a lower bit and a back bit, and we will Alt-E extrude these out, flatten this face, and pull this one like that. We'll inset, we'll extrude, maybe inset and extrude down here too. And this is where, like, I'm honestly not morally opposed to using some AI to like build a back texture or something like that, because it's out of focus and all I need is like a textured thing. But let's not do that. I'm trying to figure out a reasonable place where AI could actually, like, when all the dust settles, be kind of useful for a workflow or something. And I'm like, out of focus stuff where I just kind of need a texture, and I don't really like, I don't want to hire an artist to design a skee ball thing that you're not even going to see in the background. That could be an option. But let's see here. Here's this picture of vegetables. That's always good. Here, let's see how this goes. Okay, so this will be inside. Oh, wait. Outside. Invert the selection. Apply the outside to the outside, and we'll just make it kind of a dark brown. Again, we're not even really going to see it. We're going to select the inside here. And what's the best way to do this? UV editor. Unwrap, and we could just scale it down so it's only referencing one row of pixels, which would kind of give us this interesting effect here. And if we scale this down, we could have it go from, like, you know, the red to the yellows, and that kind of looks sure. Or that's okay. Here, let's do it on the other axis. We'll scale it like that instead. Then if I use Control R to break this up into 2 halves, I can fold this over on itself like this, and it should be symmetrical. And now I just can put this somewhere like that. And here, let's add let's put a row of lights around the inside. Here, let's pull these back a little bit more. And we'll grab this loop, extrude it inwards. And if I can grab this inner row like that, we'll give it another material, new, assign, emission. We'll make it like 20. Great. Yeah, that works. Here, we'll duplicate this, pull it out. This will be where you put your tickets in or whatever. And let's put some more kind of animated lights on here too. I don't even know. We're just going to be doing what we already did. Scale it down. That looks pretty good. Let's duplicate it and make a neon kind of layer. Doing the exact same thing. Emission. I just did it. I'm just going to do it. You can watch me do it real fast. Oh, so fast. Here, let's join all of these into the same object and see if anything goes funky. No, it still works great. And let's do another thing. Here, we'll create a circle here and duplicate it. a few times. I think this is I think I did like a slot machine tutorial once, and I think this is gonna be a little bit similar to that. I just want animated stuff in the background, so you see in the arcade, oh, it's little flashing gizmos. We're going to turn the geometry size of this up like that. We're going to convert to a mesh, and I'm just gonna copy this animated light material here onto this. But I'll make it slightly new so I can change the colors a little bit, like that. If we open up the UV editor, you can see right now it's mapped across it, which is kind of weird, but let's go U, project from view, and I'm going to try to just stick these in order, kind of like this. Select everything and go to individual origins, scale them all down, and before they get down to 0, I'm going to make sure they're spaced out all right. Cool. Now I'll scale them down to 0. Go to median, and if I rotate them like that, we can have our bullseye going. Let's see, how fast is that going? Ooh, that's pretty good. I might slow it down a little bit. In fact, okay, so here I was just animating right inside the mapping node, but if I want to randomize and do some fun stuff, I've got to expose this a little bit more. So the weird thing is there's 3 values, but there's only 1 input for the location. That's because it's like vector data, which is expecting all those numbers to be part of it. But if we don't have vector data, we have to use a combine XYZ, and the only thing this node does is exposes all of these different values here, which means we can, let's see, which means we can do our usual thing of like, you know, pound frame divided by 24, which means it'll loop once a second. It looks like it's going faster because it's looping through all 3 of these every second. So let's actually slow that down even more, maybe to 60. But now this is out here like this, we can do other stuff with it. Like here, let's duplicate a few more instances of this, and we'll use the object info node here, and the random output. Each one of these objects has a different value. And if we add that value with a math node here, they should all be offset. These 3 kind of feel like they're all in sync, but that's just kind of random chance. If we do more of them, you can see it's all random. So maybe we'll keep that going. Maybe we'll reverse it. That works good. Here, let's use another random info node over here down into the color, which randomizes the brightness. Again, it's kind of hard to see, but some of these are darker than others. But if we drag it into a color ramp here, change this to constant, we could have like this half be blue, this half be orange, maybe one more be like yellow. And if we drag these around, we can change the probability of that they'll be, you know, any given color. And here, let's change the diffuse to a glossy instead, just so it catches some of the other light around it. Hopefully that'll give it a little bit of depth. Cool. And if we take all these, copy them into our other project here. Yeah, it'll be easier to see once it's all rendered instead of just like, you know, scrubbing through in the viewport. But I think that's a lot of fun life to show. Again, as many times as possible in this scene, I want to show people are having fun. You could have fun elsewhere, but instead you're here. Let's see. I'm going to use Control R to add an edge loop here. Control B to bevel. Let's pull it out, and then let's inset, and let's extrude it in, kind of make like a gap for like a sliding door or something. Here, we'll just create a new material also and make it like just a darker kind of brown type deal. I think this gradient is maybe a little weird. I might try changing it back to yellow, or honestly the whole thing is maybe a little bit distracting, but that's all right. And I think the last thing before I call it quits is I want to make this building in the background a little bit more interesting. So here, let's hide the haze. Let's shift click right there and create a plane. Rotate it 90 degrees. I just want to add some weird infrastructure up to the top here. First, let's create a new material, and I'm just going to darken it until it basically matches the rest of this building here. And you can see it's still a little bit gray, which I think means I should probably increase the saturation of the world. Yeah, which probably helps the entire composite too, because that means now the sky is actually... I was matching the sky here, but again, that's only a small sliver. There's a whole sky that covers the whole thing. And so using a white object in the scene that's facing the other way is kind of like a good way to get a sense of the actual sky. But yeah, now that's blending really good. So let's model this like that. Gonna extrude this upwards, split it up, right click, triangulate. Is that just in the right click menu? I thought it was, but F3, triangulate faces. Tap I once or twice to inset each one. We're making like a little scaffold type deal. Maybe select all of this and extrude it back like that. Could add another one here. Maybe even like, yeah, make it more interesting, kind of like that. And if I just put a few of these up here on the top, does that? Let's join all of these. Let's create a cube. Kind of see if we can create a platform or something weird on the top. And then this will be like, I don't know, just some shapes. That looks a little flat here. We'll just bevel, extrude it out, add a little bit more detail. And if we bring that haze back, great. It looks like a crane or just some sort of sci-fi doodad, and no one will have any idea where the footage ends and all of that. It's fun. Okay. My brain is obviously gone today. I will talk to you soon. But next I want to go and I want to make this foreground window full of toys or something like that. We'll figure out what's going on. We got our original background shot here, and then we got all of our stuff. So a couple days later, I rendered out the shot, and it's looking okay. The big problem for me is just compositionally, I'm not really all that fond of the shot, and I'm hoping I can kind of do something about it. It's because I raised up the camera a little bit to get their heads below this boardwalk, because I thought maybe I wanted to enhance the boardwalk or add something there, and I didn't want to have to rotoscope their heads. But that means compositionally, it's just weird that their head is just right below the horizon, and it all feels a little bit awkward. Like, you can kind of feel it when you look at this shot. It should be like 2 or 3 feet lower, kind of like at least at their shoulder height or something, but that's okay. I also thought maybe this green was a little bit much. It's I'm trying to figure out with the color scheme of the shot, really, because we've got the blues going to the warms, and I thought green would be a really good kind of natural accent color, but I think once we add the green, that's almost too much of the color spectrum. Like, we already have these orange, red accents going on, and so I decided to just kind of keep it all in that same color scheme pocket. Did another render where I just brought everything back a little bit closer to the original color scheme, you know, turned back some of the saturation. I also obviously added some little lights and things up here. People ask sometimes why I do little bits that aren't in the video, and it's because there's a lot of things I can only figure out when I don't know I'm going to be working on the shot. Like when I'm recording a video, everything has to be intentional, and I always get a lot done actually in the moments after I'm like, well, I guess I'm done for the day, gonna turn off my computer, and then I sit down and I go, well, I'll just tweak this one thing first. And like, it's this weird headspace where sometimes I'll do work on a shot knowing I can just close the file and not save any of the changes, knowing that everything I'm doing is immediately discardable, and that gives me a freedom to kind of like play with stuff in a way that I normally wouldn't. And so yeah, just being like, oh, let's try putting things on the roof. Let's try changing colors. Let's try big changes like changing the camera angle in a way I would be kind of scared to do if I was in the usual kind of work process. Okay, now the video's over. I'm gonna go get a pizza.